So imaginary numbers are I. I is defined as the square root of -1. Okay, that's the definition of I. It's the square root of -1. So I to the 43rd, I to the 43rd is either going to equal 1, I, -1, or -I. It's got to simplify somehow. And I'm going to give you the shortcut way of doing it. That's going to be the same as -I. And the reason I know that is because 43, I divided by 4. What's the closest number that goes into 43? Or the closest multiple of 4 to 43? Lower than 43.
40.
40, right. So I'm taking 40 out of that, and what's left over? 3. So I to the 3rd is what that equals, which is -I, and I'll explain why. Because I squared, what happens if I square this right here? What am I going to get? What happens when I square a square root?
Get the same thing.
It goes away. So what's I squared going to be equal to? Just -1. Let me erase this. So I is equal to the square root of -1. I squared is equal to -1. So what would I to the 3rd be equal to? It's going to be equal to I squared times I, right? And what's I squared?
-1.
I squared is -1. So what's I cubed? It's -I. See, I got that? And what's I to the 4th going to be? I to the 4th is 2I squareds, right? And what's I squared?
It's gonna be
-1. Nope. What's -1 times -1? Positive 1. So your answer, whenever you have an I to a certain power, it's got to be one of these 4 things. It's either +1, -1, positive I, or -I. And the way you know is you take that for every 4 I's that you have are just 1. Every 4 I's are just 1. So let me show you again. I to the 43rd. I to the 43rd is like I to the 4th times 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 I to the 3rd. How many I to the 4ths were there? How many 4s go into 43?
10.
10. There were 10 I to the 4ths, but what's all of those I to the 4ths equal to? What's I to the 4th always equal to? It's always equal to 1 because I squared equals -1. So I to the 4th equals 1. So all of these things are just 1, 1, 1, 1. And what's left over? I cubed. And what's I cubed? It's I squared times I. And what's I squared?
-1.
-1. So what's I to the 3rd?
Negative.
-I, not -1, -I.
Wait, so then what's the point of I if it's, or I to the 4th if it's just 1?
I guess the point of it is it equals 1. What's the point of 2/4? What's the point of the 2 and 2/4? It's the 2/4 is the same as 1/2, right? But you can say 2/4, can't you? So that's the same thing. It cancels down. It simplifies down. So, but the point of it is sometimes you have to know what those things are. For instance, so here's where your problems are going to come in. You're going to get something like this, and they're going to ask you to write this in simplest form, right? So how do I write this in simplest form? Well, I FOIL it out first of all. What is 1 plus I squared? It's 1 plus I times 1 plus I. And so let's FOIL this out. It's going to be 1 plus I plus I plus I squared, right? What's I plus I?
2I.
2I. What's I squared?
-1.
-1. And so what happens to these things? What's 1 plus 2I minus 1? Those cancel, so what's your answer? It's just 2I. So what's this thing simplified? It's 2I. Let's try another one. What's 3 plus 4I times 6 minus 2I? I'm just making this up. Let's FOIL it out. Ready? 18 plus 24i minus 6i minus 8i squared. What does I squared equal?
-1.
It equals -1. So what is this really right here? What's -8 times -1?
It's positive 8.
It's positive 8. Get it? So what do these things add up to? See how they're like terms? They're both i's. What do they add up to?
18.
18i. And so I have 18 plus 18i plus 8. What's 8 plus 18?
26.
26 plus 18i. That's your standard form. Your standard form is always a plus bi, where a is a real number, b is an imaginary. bi is imaginary, the imaginary part. Okay? So you might also see a problem like this. I cubed plus 3 times I to the 5th. I don't know why you'd have it, but maybe you'd have a problem like that. And you'd have to figure out what does that simplify to. So you can distribute this in. What do you do with the 3 and the 5?
Multiply.
I to the what? 15, right? Plus 3i to the 5th. Alright, so now this is where you got to do that fancy stuff. What's I to the 15? How many 4s are in 15?
Wait, why do we always use 4?
Because I to the 4th equals what?
1.
That's why we use
okay.
4. So what's I to the 15? It's how many I to the 4ths?
4. 3.
It's 3i to the 4ths, and that takes up 12 of them, and how many are left over?
3.
There's 3 left over, so this is the same as I to the 3rd, and what's I to the 3rd the same as? -I. Very good, because it's I squared, which is -1 times I. Got it? And what's this right here? What's I to the 5th the same as? I to the 5th is the same as I to the 4th times I to the 1st. And what's I to the 4th? It's 1. So this is just the same as I, right? So this is just plus 3i. And what's -1i plus 3i?
2i.
That's the simplified form of that expression. Just 2i. Kind of like simplifying fractions or simplifying radicals. That's the rule for simplifying I or complex numbers. Okay? So that's how you do that.